Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? Let me know. I think that's better. I had the mic turned off. Guys, we're going to tune in. Breaking news. They have reached a verdict in the Derek Chauvin matters. We're going to find out right now what the verdict is. Uh, Whoever you are, wherever you are, I see a lot of people are piling in. Come on in. We're about to go live in a second and cut to ABC News. They are actually live streaming the verdict. We'll find out in a little bit what the decision is. I actually don't, my personal opinion, you guys may ask some questions. Uh, we got somebody that's going to, heaven says not guilty. I don't know about all of that. Well, and it could be. I mean, I've said I wouldn't be surprised if he were acquitted on this, but we will see eventually what happens. It might be a lesser charge that he's convicted of. This was a pretty quick. I won't, voting, especially in jury verdicts, we don't know typically how long it will take. That's not necessarily an indication that someone is guilty, will be found guilty or not guilty. It took O.J. Simpson's case. I think they only deliberated for maybe 2 hours or less than that before a decision was made. So we're going to find out in a little bit what the decision is. Let me just go ahead and put up the screen right now so you all can see there. This is breaking news. Of course, verdict has been made. We're waiting to see what the results are.
Parents bought this land, or loved ones got this land in the early 19.
That during the course of this trial, we had so many other episodes of police.
I'm going to go
there wasn't a
directly
lot
to
that Eric Nelson, the defense
11.
attorney,
That's
could
out
do
there in Minnesota
at that point
right
of the
there.
trial.
And open it up for.
It'll be read at about 3:30 this afternoon. So we'll go live there and click to it. Excuse me 1 second. How long, guys, till the verdict? They say 3:30. 3:30, the verdict is going to be read. We'll find out what happens in a minute. We don't know for sure. What do you guys think? Some people say guilty, not guilty. I mean, we'll find out in a minute. The next 30 minutes, I think they're bracing themselves. What's up, Melanated Brown? Hello, thank you for tuning in. Everybody that's tuning in right now. Well, we don't know for sure what exactly will happen. There's still some debate and talk about it. I just jumped when I got the alert on my phone about 5 minutes ago, and my father actually called me in the back telling me that they reached a verdict. This is going to be something that's going to be talked about for a long time, no matter what the decision is. And, nothing that they do, nothing that they come up with, no matter what they say, can bring George Floyd back from the dead. Typically I saw Sarah Sanders, because they always have her on CNN. They talked about how she stated the brother was saying that no matter what the verdict is, we're going to remain calm. And that's always typical of what they do, especially for Black families when they lose a loved one. They always like to say, do you forgive? Do you love the enemy? What do you pray for? What do you hope for? All of this stuff to try and get people to remain calm with this. And I don't know how anyone can do it, especially if anyone loses their family. I don't know how they can remain calm if their verdict doesn't go the way that they want. I'm not endorsing violence, of course. The legal process is the legal process. They've told us this before. Remember when Rodney King happened, they told us respect the process. And then when OJ happened, we said the same thing. Y'all respect the process. So we got to tell him that in reverse with OJ. You respect the process. Although truth be told, OJ had nothing to do with that whole thing. I don't care what anybody says. No, I don't. There's no mistrial. If there's a verdict, that's not a mistrial. The judges already said that there would be no mistrial when he talked about the Maxine Waters matter. He talked about the incident with regards to comments made by the prosecutors. The prosecutors have to tread lightly. I think at one point the prosecutor was talking about telling the jurors how they're supposed to react on their gut feelings, which would be a no-no. You're supposed to react as a juror based on the evidence and evidence alone. Heaven stated, it's unfortunate that George died. It's just that powerful drugs that takes lives. I've lost friends to heroin, consuming fentanyl will really take your life. This was not a heroin overdose, Heaven. This wasn't. Where my mods at? This was not an overdose. The doctors have already stated that this was not a heroin overdose. He could not, even if he swallowed it. The body takes time to absorb drugs, ladies and gentlemen. Do you guys know whenever you put something in, you do know that it's not automatically absorbed. It's not automatically absorbed once you put something in your mouth. That's not how your body works. That is not how your body works. What's up, Vulcan? Vulc, you a mod? All right, be on the lookout because we're going to have some trolls up in here. So I've muted the audio for a reason so I could talk a little bit. I also don't want a copyright issue, so I got to be respectful of that. Of course, this is all covered under the Fair Use Act of 1976. Think thought you were a mod already, Vulcan. Or are you not?
Start with the top count here, second-degree murder, second count's third degree, and the last count is second-degree manslaughter. So whichever count they find Chauvin guilty of, they really don't need to go to the other counts. So they start with the highest counts, the greatest of charges, and then they work their way down.
That's the second-degree
having
murder.
Come back this quickly, I think that we are likely going to see Chauvin found guilty on one of the top two counts, both murder charges.
And after
you don't necessarily know that. See, look, I don't want.
That you would agree with that after seeing the evidence and hearing the testimony?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to get to second-degree murder because you have to believe that there was an intentional assault happening with Chauvin and George Floyd, which I always thought was going to be difficult for a jury to find. But I've always believed that third-degree murder was an appropriate charge.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about, Heaven.
And certainly you can get to second-degree
He did not.
you
don't know what the hell you're talking about. It was not a fentanyl overdose.
Shooting. It's more of an accidental type offense versus
the doctors have already examined his body.
The
autopsy technicians said that it was a homicide.
Carmen, thanks so much. We appreciate your time very much. We may check back with you as we move along here. Rena, you sent us a little bit of a text here saying something about Hennepin County employees.
I don't get where you guys, you can have a drug, amount of drugs in your system.
Saying that the Hennepin County Court received a warning. Downtown court.
I've been watching this since day one too. If you watch since day one, brother Heaven, then maybe you should already know what the coroner's autopsy report stated. He ruled a homicide.
And I'm seeing a lot of people that are posting saying that they're
but that's how it typically goes. A prosecutor is pushing for a conviction. Yes, they're going to say it's a homicide, and the defense's job is to try to make sure that his client gets off. Or if they don't get off, get the least amount of time and punishment that would come from it, i.e. a lesser charge. That's why they're raising all of these elements about causation. that George Floyd had a
Right,
heart
one of the voices
that was
we
too
have
small. You
really
said
learned a
there have
lot
been
from
multiple
and
coroners
enjoyed
with
hearing from,
contradicting
and we
causes
have
of death.
seen from your
The
emails
coroners
and
have
social
all
media that you
stated
have
that
too,
homicide
is
played a
Mary
role in it.
Moriarty. She
Sir,
has been
there has been
someone
no
who's helped all of
contradiction.
us
How?
around the country, in fact, understand what's going on during this trial. Thanks again for your time, Mary. Your reactions to the verdict that is about to be read, coming in so quickly, it's going to be read between.
But you're
3:30
assuming that the
and 4.
defense is right. No, I've taken consideration to the defense's argument on
Yesterday when people
causation.
were asking
But
what their
listen, you
guesses
can have
were,
mitigating
obviously nobody had
factors.
a
This is
crystal
why it's
ball, but I thought they
important
would be back today.
to actually know
And I
law.
thought that because
You can be high, you can have heart disease, you can have diabetes, but guess what? Somebody can still kill you because why? I'm mortal. I'm sorry. Well, you seem like a bit of a troll anyway. Well, you are a troll. Like, you got it right there on your avatar. Put his ass in timeout. Yeah. Put his ass in timeout. Y'all got to be on your jobs, mods.
Lou Raguse here. Thanks again for joining us.
Hey, Lou.
Hey, so one thing I want people to really understand, according to these elements,
I don't even like
is
doing that stuff because I like
favorable
to see
instruction that they
debate
got
and
on
so
the
forth
assault.
with
And
people.
the way
I
that the
respect
state
the First
explained it during
Amendment, but
closing argument,
I know you
is
coming
that
in here to
prove
start some shit.
intent to assault. They don't need to prove that Derek Chauvin wanted to hurt George
That's
Floyd.
correct.
Just had to prove that the action of putting the knee on the neck essentially was intentional, and that it also happened to be unlawful.
Right.
Yes. It wasn't that he had to intend the result, but that he intended the act that he did. For instance, he intended to put his knee on the neck. He doesn't have to have what we call specific intent to cause whatever happened after that.
Okay, and just an update to everyone. We're keeping an eye on the courtroom here, and the judge is in the courtroom, but we're not going there quite yet. They're not quite ready for that yet. The verdict will be read between 3:30 and 4, we're told. And Mary, just in your prediction that it will be a conviction across the board, what else did you take into account when it came to the way that these elements were written and these instructions were given to the jury? What else made you think that this is going to be a conviction across the board?
A couple of things.
Now, this
One
is
of
something
the
I
other
don't like.
instructions I thought
This is
was
their
very
opinion, of
favorable
course,
for
but
the state
y'all don't know for a
was the
fact it
use
can
of
be a
force
conviction.
instruction. The defense had asked for an instruction that had been given
That
in the
defense,
Honest case.
let me say
shooting of
this in
Lando
my
Castillo,
expert
called the
opinion.
2020 hindsight
That defense
instruction. And
actually,
essentially what it instructs the jurors to do is to consider what a reasonable police officer would have done at the time, not in 2020 hindsight. I think that makes it extremely difficult for jurors to put themselves in the position of second guessing what police officers
it all depends
do.
on the
And
makeup
judge
of
did not
that
give
jury. I know
instruction
that
in
they
this
got
case,
some
which I think
islanders
was
in there, but
appropriate
listen,
because we were talking
the
about
defense, you
9.5
can't
minutes
rely
here.
on
The other thing
negative
I thought was
media.
very important was the defense approach to this was really kind of a
Oh, your ass is back?
shotgun approach of there are all these reasons.
No, I
to
didn't
doubt
delete
and listed
anything,
many
comments that
different
affected
reasons.
my
He
narrative. It's the
spent,
fact that you're
a lot
trolling.
of time talking about what happened before that 9.5 minutes. What a
You can
reasonable
debate
police
with me
officer
in
would know and
argument
take
when
into
you come up here
consideration,
lying and
but
you're
he never
trolling
really
on
was
me.
able to
We're not going to
address,
have that.
particularly that last 3.5 minutes. There was no explanation for that.
We're not going to have that.
And so given the way the closing arguments went in the medical testimony, it seemed to me that the defense was really unable to show that there was reasonable doubt here. I did expect that the jurors would take some time. They understand the consequence of this decision. They understand the gravity of it. And I'm sure they took the time to assure people, to assure themselves that they were making the right decision.
You're too
All right,
ugly.
well, Mary, once again, we appreciate your insight. We hope you'll hang around for a bit. We'll check back. Thanks so much.
Let's go downtown
Thank you.
Minneapolis. Charmaine is standing by. Charmaine?
Hi guys. Yes, I'm out
The
here in
heavenly
front of the
demon.
Hampton County
That's
Courthouse.
No, I can accept an opposing argument.
I want to take it right over to Cheryl Anderson. She has been out here on the ground each and every day.
You haven't made an argument. You haven't made an argument. You're repeating. You're repeating race. You're repeating false racist stuff.
I don't know. Excitement for sure, and just energy, justification. I think there's a lot of positive attitudes out here for the right thing.
And we were talking earlier, were we expecting this?
For whatever reason.
This to come today?
Oh yeah, I was waiting for it. I'm surprised that they waited this long. I'm surprised. I'm surprised. There's no way they could have waited any longer.
And for you, Kim, I want to bring you out because I've seen you out here standing and trying to talk to people out here that have been showing emotions, a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt out here. What are you seeing? You've been out here. I've seen you out here every day.
Yes, ma'am. I'm seeing a whole mix of emotions.
Let me say this, guys. I have no problem with anybody coming on this channel. Y'all know me. I got no problem with people debating with me back and forth. But don't come up here lying, talking bullshit. Thank you, CH464. But it's y'all mess up my name all the time. Gavin. Yeah, the same defense come up talking about toxic fumes from the exhaust pipe, but yet they couldn't confirm that the car was even on or not. They've already said, the police detective, even the police chief even testified and said, this was not how you do police work. There is no use of force like what they had on that videotape. So go ahead and make your stuff up if you want. So what do y'all think? Just some people, you think he's gonna get acquitted? If you think he's gonna be convicted on lesser charges? Well, it's the same guy. It's a troll. Melanated. I've been fine, Pirate Brain. I've been fine. Why y'all still mess up my damn name? Gavin is all my life. I've been either Gavin, Galvin, Gavin, Given. And don't get me, even on my last name, and I'm here in New Orleans, we say Richard. People will say Richard. When I was a kid, kids would pick on me. They called me retard, which, obviously it's not funny. And I'm not trying to get a strike from the YouTube family, I shouldn't call them family, but from YouTube over, stuff like this. So we're going to know in about 21 minutes from now what the verdict is. Yeah, we can all agree to disagree. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. We had somebody that commented earlier that said it'll be not guilty. I don't know who that thought the verdict was going to be not guilty. I don't know what happened to them, but that's their opinion. I have no problem with that. The defense didn't have a defense, right? The defense was, the defense does not have to prove the defense doesn't have to prove a defense or put on a defense at all. Their job is to basically block or defend or raise enough reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury. The prosecutor bears the burden of proof. He has to prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's go ahead and listen to
the votes,
I don't know who this
et cetera.
is.
But this certainly seems quick to me, and probably in the long run, that's a good thing.
So we do understand, we'll just let our viewers know that Derek Chauvin is now in the courthouse and the verdict will be read in 20 minutes, anywhere between 20 minutes to 40 minutes from now. Doug, I'm wondering if you could tell us, what can we expect? We don't have the experience in the courtroom like you do. How will this all play out?
Well, this is the ultimate reality event. It's one of the last events that nobody can predict, and we know that there's going to be something unusual. Juries are notoriously unpredictable about what they do, but they will bring them all in the courtroom. And after everybody's there, the judge will ask the foreperson, have you reached a verdict? They will give the verdict to the judge or the judge's clerk, and they will read the verdict. Then in federal court, typically the defense then asks to poll the jury, in which case the judge would ask each of the jurors, is this your verdict? How say you? And then everybody will say, yes, this is my verdict. And that will come first. And then right after that, there will be a big decision here as to whether the judge is going to keep Derek Chauvin
I'll be right
in
back,
custody
guys.
or put him in custody right away.
I
I would predict that since this is presumptive prison time, I would predict that he would take Chauvin into custody right away. So that's kind of pretty much what you'll see, I think, this afternoon.
Thanks, Doug. Lou Raguse here. And just for some context, former Officer Muhammad Noor was handcuffed immediately after his conviction and walked out by a deputy in custody. I have some questions about the aggravating factors and how that will play out if there is a conviction. We heard yesterday that the judge would be the one to decide whether the aggravating factors are present rather than the jury in this case. How does that work?
Well,
that would be
you
huge.
have to hold a hearing afterwards if he is convicted and the prosecution has already moved for an upward durational departure. I'm predicting that they would give the parties perhaps like a month or something, maybe shorter time, to brief the issue of the aggravating factors. I believe since he has waived his rights under the Blakely case and his right to have the jury decide the aggravating factors, that it will be decided primarily on the papers. I don't know if there will be anything left for testimony or not, and at which time Judge Cahill then would say, I agree, there are aggravating factors here, and I'm going to depart upward from the sentencing guidelines. And that'll be an important hearing for Derek Chauvin if it comes.
Well, and there's been a lot of talk, and there will be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, and this trial will be dissected, I'm sure, for years to come. But there has already been a lot said in the courtroom about outside influences potentially on the jury, from the settlement being announced to remarks made by Congresswoman Maxine Waters about what the verdict should be. How much of an impact do you think that may have had on the jury or on an appeal?
You know, we don't know how much impact it has had on the jury. We have not had any instances where somebody has reported contacts with the juror. I think there was one thing that there was a rumor that somebody had contacted a major media source, and the judge worked his way through that and decided that it was not really true. So I think that it undoubtedly, and you know, the one thing from the very beginning, we were worried about how to pick a jury in this case. Where would we find jurors who had not seen the tapes or who were not totally influenced by the tapes? And I thought that Judge Cahill and the parties got through that pretty well. But as you said, Julie, you know, I mean, first of all, was that $27 million settlement. Then we had the Potter shooting in Brooklyn Center. And finally, we've had the comments by Congresswoman Maxine Waters. All of those things add up I don't think they're going to have traction on the appeal because they haven't been linked specifically to any juror so far.
Okay.
All right. Doug, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have you kind of stand by as well. We want to go downtown Minneapolis. Madison Carter is downtown to give us a look at what's going on there. Madison?
Yeah, I'm right here on the corner of South Marquette and 8th Street. This is across from the 8th Street Grill. That's actually where we were headed once we found out that verdict was coming in. We wanted to sit with some people who are possibly going to be watching that verdict, but we called as soon as we arrived. They said they were shutting down for the day, and that's happening to businesses all up and down the street, everywhere. We're about a block and a half from the Hennepin County Courthouse now, and look at what you're seeing right now. All these cars, people who are working downtown, they jumped in their car as soon as they heard that there was going to be a verdict read soon, and they are trying to book it out of downtown. But there are a lot of people we also saw coming downtown on foot. They were parking blocks away because, as you know, around the courthouse, you cannot park your car, and they're on foot. They are walking toward there. People are not in a hurry. They are taking their time, a lot of them with groups of friends headed down that way. Another thing we're seeing downtown, most of the businesses around the Hennepin County Courthouse, at least let's say within like 4 blocks or so, they had already boarded up. The ones that hadn't, though, as we got out of the car, we saw them coming out of their businesses, slapping up these barriers, painting over them. So they knew and they were prepared for when this verdict came in to board up their businesses, shut it down for the day. A lot of them also saying they're going to be shut down tomorrow as well. But earlier in the day, my photographer, Joe, and I, we were actually over in George Floyd Square. We wanted to talk to people about what they were feeling. Were they anxious? And I can tell you everyone was on pins and needles. A lot of locals were going over to George Floyd Square because they said they wanted to feel something. They were sitting at home doing what we were all doing, doom scrolling on their phones, trying to see what was happening, whether the jury was asking any questions, whether they had reached a verdict. People said they just could not sit at home. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people who were already in the downtown area now headed down. We did see a couple people headed away on foot, as I said, trying to get out again. So as I mentioned, we are a couple blocks away from the courthouse right now. Things were very, very quiet as we drove in. Now they are very, very busy as people are trying to drive out as we await a verdict. Not sure which way it's going to go. Not sure how people are going to react. We're a couple blocks away. We're going to move in a little bit closer just to see where people are at, how they are reacting here on the ground. But
it's
I can tell you
right,
again,
brothers.
on South Marquette and
no
8th
hard
Street,
feelings. I'm
all
kind
of
of
the
used to it,
businesses
but,
are boarding up. People are trying to go
but,
home. I heard a little
yeah,
earlier in
no
the broadcast, you said that the government buildings, everybody told their employees to go home.
Brother.
They were shutting down for the day. We heard some
Derek
bells
Bailey
tolling.
So
there's definitely a lot of activity,
Derek.
even a couple blocks away from the courthouse, as everyone has been so anxious all day to find out what's going to happen when this verdict comes in.
Better stock
We're
up.
going to stay here on the ground and we'll bring you the updates.
Together.
Madison, I love the juxtaposition that you've noticed of
I am not saying or encouraging you to engage in violence. I don't believe in violence. I do believe, let me mute it right there. I believe in self-defense. So you guys just be mindful about what's going on, what happens here, and listen, I'm not going to even be out with protesters like talking about it. You know why? Because we've already talked about where Black Lives Matter stands on this issue. Standing on the graves of Black men. I've stood by that. I've had my issues with Black Lives Matter. That slogan, Black Lives Matter, is great. But what it stands for, what they have done in the past, I'm not too proud of. So we're going to find out. Again, if you're tuning in, breaking news, a verdict has been reached in the Derek Chauvin trial. We just got this alert about 20 minutes ago. If you're just tuning in, Derek Chauvin, there is a verdict in here. The jurors, in about 10 minutes, the verdict is going to be read. I remember when... Well, look, of course, Bishop Scott. What's up, Bishop? It's good to see you. If you see a guilty verdict, I don't see any uprising happening from the Black community. Well, look, it is not Black people that have been uprising. You've seen mostly whites that have been out here doing all of this stuff. When I was, of course, I have been to protest and rallies where I've seen, of course, Black people that are there. But most of the people that have been doing the looting and rioting, especially last year, were whites. It wasn't blacks that were out here. So no matter how they try to push it or turn it around, it hasn't been us. Certainly has not been the black community that's been out here doing that. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the screen in a minute, but I wanted to just talk with you all, get your opinion about what's going on, what you think. Some of you think that this is going to be a guilty verdict. I've seen a couple have seen not, I've seen a few not guilty.
Right now, we all need to have big hearts to develop a sense of empathy, to be deeply concerned about what happens to our community and those who are living on the margins in our community. And that requires us, again, to think beyond this verdict and to start to think in concrete ways about how we can build the Twin Cities we all want to live in, to reimagine a space where people don't feel insecure, where our governor can't say to the nation that African-American drivers don't feel safe in our state. And I think those are big, lofty goals, but they're important goals that can center us in this moment. Again, it's very easy for people to be overwhelmed by this moment. Whatever the outcome, our community is still on trial. And the ultimate verdict in that case is where we are in 5 years and what we can say about what we learned from this moment, how we grew and how we helped to create an equitable Twin Cities as a result.
And that conversation, as you said, has to happen no matter what we hear in the next 15 minutes. It just has to.
It's essential. And I think, at the other extreme of this is that we're now looking at the Daunte Wright case. This is a conversation that's longitudinal. It's not something that we're going to overcome in the next year. We really have to get beyond this idea that this is just about what happens in this case. We have to think about, as a community as a whole, what it would mean for us to reimagine our laws, to take a hard look at our structures, not to be destabilized by language like defund the police, but understand the impulse behind that and where people are saying we should invest our monies.
This guy sounds like Kermit the Frog.
Trying to create equitable policing in communities that people feel safe and secure in. At the end of the day, I think still the most compelling witness may be Charles McMillan and the words that he shared with Derek Chauvin about wanting him to go home safe at the end of the day and wanting people in the community to be able to go home safe. At the end of the day, we want a Twin Cities, a community we can be proud of, but that can only happen if we're going to privilege the safety and security of all of our residents. And that means dealing with racial disparities as they are presently constituted and thinking about ways that we don't lose momentum on this. This is not the time to take our foot off the gas and to assume that this is over. This is the time to dig in even deeper. This is the time to invest.
See, we got some people on Facebook.
Tackling disparities
well,
and making
them.
our community whole.
I want to ask you.
Let me make this point too. I remember I was going to make this comment.
In with you after the
I
want to ask you this.
Remember where I was.
The defense attorney said in this case on one of the first days, this case isn't about race. Was he right?
No, he wasn't right. This case is absolutely about race. And it would be wrong for us to assume that the third rail in American politics hasn't exerted a huge influence over this. We all know as we're awaiting this verdict that this is a moratorium on race and policing in America and the insecurity, the relative insecurity that communities of color, particularly African Americans, feel around policing as it's directed against Black and brown people in the United States. I understand that appeal, but at the core, this is as much a moratorium on race as it is on criminal justice, and ultimately as it will be in our community in terms of how we address broader issues of economic disparity as a whole.
Dr. Williams, the founding director of the Racial Justice Initiative at the University of St. Thomas, we thank you for your time. We'll check back in with you later. Randy and Julie.
Wow, Jana, that was a fabulous conversation. It reminds me what the governor said last night too, of we can't keep living like this. We can't keep living like this.
It's got to change. Let's go down to 38th in Chicago.
Let me make
Devon
this
Ramos
comment.
Standing by live. Devon?
Let me say this. I remember where I was when the verdict for Trayvon Martin was read. I was actually in law school at that time. And I remember I was over by, there's a girl I was seeing at that time. We actually, I watched it with her. And, she was taken aback, obviously, when the verdict came in. Because remember, that verdict was read on the weekend. That was a whole weekend when that was announced. And we were all upset and saddened by it. A lot of people were upset because they thought that well, they didn't. I don't think, but Trayvon Martin was the one that was really put on trial that day, not George Zimmerman. That entire trial, that whole few weeks that lasted, they essentially said that Trayvon Martin is the one that caused his own death, that he deserved to be shot. They talked about his getting suspended from school, how he was big, how his tattoos, how he was built compared to George Zimmerman, who was this little puffed up, little puffy dude, fat dude walking around that wanted to be a damn MMA fighter. But we knew differently. What's going on, Kyle? What's going on, Miss Flurry? We are live right now. If you all are tuning in, we are just waiting about 4 minutes from now. They are to announce the verdict in the I keep making that mistake, in the Derek Chauvin trial. This comes back down about 45 minutes ago. It was announced that the juries had reached a verdict. The jurors are going to be entering the courthouse in a little bit. So we're about 4 minutes away from that verdict being read. It's supposed to be between 3:30 and 4 o'clock when that verdict is read. So I just want to know what you all think. Who thinks this will be a guilty verdict? Those that think it'll be a not guilty verdict, or do you feel like it'll be a lesser charge? I'm seeing people who are saying that it may not be murder. Bishop Scott said that he's expecting third-degree murder, less probably, yet not possible, second-degree murder. The problem with what you heard earlier too about specific intent, murder requires a mental element with that, meaning what we call mens rea. There's actus rea, there's mens rea. This is for my criminal law students that are out there, although you should be getting ready for your next finals. But criminal law, criminal law requires intent. There's an intent element, basically specific intent, mens rea, actus rea, causation, identity of the perpetrator, and consequences. 5 elements. So murder itself, especially when you talk about first degree murder, and even in some cases here in Louisiana, we talk about second degree, there's a mental element that's required in those circumstances, in the fact pattern. Did this person know what they were doing? Did they know that their actions would result in the death of another human being? I don't exactly know what Minnesota law is as it pertains to the definition of murder. I do know what Louisiana law states. We can actually go ahead and look up Minnesota murder statute right now, and I'll compare and contrast that with the Louisiana statute if you'd like. But this is the definition. Let me just stop the screen for a second if I could. We'll get back to the video. I won't let you all miss that. But this is what Minnesota law is in regards to murder in the first degree. Whoever does any of the following of murder in the first degree and shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life, causes the death of a human being with premeditation and with intent to affect the death of the person or of another, causes the death of a human being while committing or attempting to commit criminal sexual conduct. Of course, there you see here enumerated felonies that are listed. So let's look at, if we can, I guess this is murder in the second degree. Whoever commits murder in the second degree shall be sentenced for no more than 40 years, which is the highest charge he has. It's an unintentional murder. Causes the death of a human being without intent to affect the death of any person while committing or attempting to commit a felony offense other than criminal sexual conduct in the first or second degree. So basically what that means is that without any intent and you're engaged in a felony that's not either a criminal sexual conduct in the first or second degree with force or by drive-by shooting, then that's not first degree. Then that's unintentional murder. Or causes the death of a human being without intent to affect the death of any person while intentionally inflicting or attempting to inflict bodily harm upon the victim when the perpetrator is restrained under an order for protection and the victim is a person designated to receive protection under the order. So this is a protection order. Now, it could be if you look at this clause, causes the death of the human being with the intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So there is a mental element that we see here, and perhaps that might be a stretch for the prosecutor to make. But then when we look at the third degree, that occurs when you kill someone, you affect the death without any intent, and an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life. So perhaps that could be that. There's also the manslaughter statutes. Manslaughter is a lesser offense, intentionally causes the death of another person in the heat of the moment, as what we call it, heat of passion provoked by such words or acts by another as would provoke a person of ordinary self-control under like circumstances, provided that the crying of a child does not constitute provocation. Well, that wasn't the case here. Let's see. We're going to go. It's 3:31 right now. They're not putting it on in the courtroom from what I see. Louisiana law is a little bit different. Louisiana law, I'm just going to show you guys right quick. These are our murder statutes. For those that, if you're interested, this is second-degree murder. It's when the offender has specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm, or if he is engaged in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of any of these enumerated felonies, that I'm not going to list all of them, but even though he has no intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm. This is first-degree murder. And of course, this is much more severe. Louisiana, we have the death penalty. If you have specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm, and you're engaged in the perpetration of any of these felonies, if you're engaged in either distribution of firearms, if you're trying to kill a police officer, kill a witness, that's first-degree murder. This is manslaughter. Of course, it's similar. It's caused by provocation sufficient to deprive an average person of his self-control and cool reflection. So that's some of the stuff that you're dealing with. Of course, provocation is defined here as shall not reduce a homicide to manslaughter if the jury finds that the offender's blood had actually cooled, or that an average person's blood would have cooled at the time the offense was committed. So let's go back. We're going to look at this verdict. I'm going to have it turned on now.
Each of these charges he's facing range from, on the lower end, the manslaughter charge, a presumptive guideline sentence of 48 months, so about 4 years. With respect to the second-degree murder, the highest charge, around 150 or so months. But also remember that the state is seeking aggravated upward departures here on a number of bases: a child present, position of authority, a special cruelty. And Derek Chauvin waived his right to have the jury consider whether those aggravating factors are present, meaning that Judge Cahill will be making that decision. And if he finds those aggravating factors are present, then he is free to sentence Derek Chauvin to the maximum potential sentence, which in this case on the second-degree murder charge would be 20 years.
Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing. We're looking at some live shots outside the Hennepin County Courthouse, which really lends itself to the pressure and the emotions and the responsibility on this particular jury. Every juror takes that job seriously, we certainly hope, especially in a murder trial. It's hard to even imagine what these jurors felt. And I know Lauren had mentioned they seemed to be a tight-knit group already on the day that she was in the courtroom observing them. This is a tremendous, maybe even a nearly unprecedented amount of pressure on these jurors.
Certainly unprecedented in my experience. in our lifetimes, and I would say probably ever. The O.J. Simpson trial comes to mind 20 plus years ago, but this case, I think, has impacted our community and our country in a way that even the O.J. Simpson trial didn't. And of course, we now have social media and so many other ways that this case has just permeated everything. And so this is, without any precedent that I could think of.
Hey, Brock, Lou here. Thanks again for helping us out throughout this trial.
Thank you, Lou.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about the timing of the deliberations, about 10 hours of deliberation? The jury, they may have been tilted one way to start out. Is that enough time to come up with a split verdict, or is it most likely a verdict straight down the line?
I've been talking with my colleagues about this all day, and certainly since we received news of the verdict, Lou, our feeling is that this verdict coming back so quickly weighs pretty heavily in favor of the idea that it will be a conviction on all 3 counts. And the reason for that is we just feel that there wasn't enough time for the jurors to reach any kind of an agreement regarding an acquittal on any of these 3 counts. I think that given the strength of the state's evidence, I think if there was a division among jurors on any of these counts, we would be seeing more days of deliberation.
Okay.
All right. And just one quick question for you before we ask you to hang on for a little bit longer. But I'm just wondering, what will this look like if he is convicted on any of the charges? Does he immediately go to jail today, or does he wait through sentencing?
Well, that's up to the judge. But if he is convicted, and because these are charges that carry presumptive prison sentences, it is not unusual for the judge to change the conditions of release and to take a defendant into custody after a finding of guilt. And under the circumstances here, I guess I would be surprised if Judge Cahill did not do that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Brock, so much. We want to let people know it's 3:37. When and if they start the proceedings in court, we will take that immediately. Devon Raming, standing by at 38th in Chicago. The crowd is growing outside the Hennepin County Government Center, certainly growing at 38th in Chicago as well. Devon?
Hey, Randy. Yeah, you are right. The crowd has definitely grown since we got out here nearly an hour ago. I'm going to step out of the shot just so you guys can see what's kind of unfolding behind me here. Obviously, this is the very intersection where George Floyd died nearly a year ago here while in police custody. And at this same site nearly a year ago, people are gathering to be a part of this historic day as we await this verdict in this trial. Right now, the crowd here has been hearing from some of the self-proclaimed gatekeepers of George Floyd Square. These are the people that have been out here holding ground really since this incident happened almost a year ago. And now they are talking to this crowd. They've asked people that, if they have a faith, if they believe in God, they've been asking them to pray that things go in their favor, that the verdict that we're all awaiting comes out in their favor. And that's basically what's happening right now. We've seen a lot of people that have been hugging. There are people out here who are holding signs with pictures and paintings of George Floyd. There are people that are holding signs that say Black Lives Matter. And it's really a mixed crowd of people, mixed crowd of emotions. And everyone's just kind of hunkered down here in anticipation of what's to come here in the next few minutes.
All right, Devon, thank you so much. We'll check back. We appreciate it. We're going to take a live look right now. You can see this is just outside the Hennepin County Government Center. One of our reporters earlier made the observation that it seemed like a lot of people who work downtown, once they heard news the verdict was coming, were quick to get out of downtown. But at the same time, lots of people pouring into downtown in anticipation of this verdict. And of course, as a community, we have all been on edge during this trial and really throughout the past year since George Floyd died. And we know that there is an extraordinary police presence and the National Guard in downtown Minneapolis and throughout the Twin Cities tonight. For some people we've talked to, that makes them feel more secure. For some people, that puts them even more on edge. But the fact is, a lot of businesses have been boarding up, and the governor has even asked other states to come and lend their hand in making sure whatever the verdict is, we keep the peace. And Rena Sargentopoulos has been doing just a wonderful job along with Lou Ragoose and our team here of covering this trial. And I know you've been watching social media and trying to follow updates from Operation Safety Net. Have they said anything during this time?
You know, it's interesting, Julie, because they were supposed to have a press briefing, a news conference coming up here at 4 o'clock, and they did cancel that today, obviously, because of the impending verdict that we're waiting for. And we haven't seen them really talking about anything. My guess is because they are preparing for what is happening or could potentially be happening downtown. And you talked about the people leaving downtown and people trying to get in downtown. And we are seeing a lot of that on social media, people talking about how bad the traffic is or that they were told to leave downtown. And one of the things that Brock mentioned just about the historic nature of this verdict and this trial, we're seeing a lot of that sentiment online too. People saying the Chauvin verdict is as monumental as the ones for Rodney King, O.J. Simpson, Marcus Robinson, and others. No wonder it's causing so much anxiety. The Chauvin verdict is expected very soon, short deliberations and a swift decision from the jury. A nation on edge. This is history in the making for millions of Americans. The anguish and anticipation are immeasurable. And that is just about, you cannot encapsulate that any better than what that person said there. A lot of people on edge as we wait any minute now for this verdict in this case.
All right, Rena, thank you so much. Let's go back downtown. Danny Spiewak has a bird's eye view of what we're looking at right now that's on the ground of this picture. Danny, your observations.
Well, Randy, what's jumping out to me right now is, of course, the National Guard has been such a presence downtown and, of course, has almost become a part of daily life for those who live in Minneapolis during this trial. Normally, they have 2 soldiers that are stationed sort of on top of the government center. If you're familiar with the government center, there's those steps that lead up to a top entrance. Well, right now, they have about a half dozen soldiers. Haven't seen a ton of movement other than that. They're just kind of keeping watch. And right now, there are just small groups of people that are gathering in the lawn of the government center. The observations are spot on from all of my colleagues and those on social media as well that have noticed that there's traffic leaving downtown, still seeing some cars that are moving here, even at this late hour, with those who know that a verdict is coming within minutes, but other cars that are starting to fill up all the spots. The street parking, which for the last 3 weeks and even into jury selection beyond that in early March was never filled. Well, now they're all filled. You can't even get a parking spot in downtown Minneapolis because so many people have been coming to gather here and try to take in this moment, as they know they are just feet from where this decision is happening. Although, of course, because of COVID, only a limited number of people are allowed in there. Only 2 reporters, 1 broadcast reporter and 1 print reporter, pool reporters, to be able to witness this moment. So we're seeing grills down there. We can even smell that up here on the roof. People are just anticipating and waiting. That's all they can do right now. They can try to predict what it means that the jury came back quickly, but at this point, they're just waiting like the rest of us.
And knowing that I'm sure they will be there. This will be a moment in history, and they want to be there to experience it together. Thank you so much, Danny. We have Charmaine Nero, who is amongst the crowd there outside the government center. Charmaine, what are you seeing and hearing?
Hi, yes. As I said earlier, there is still a very much growing crowd out here. We even see this table here with a vendor selling Black Lives Matter shirts. So right now he has set this up since we've got here, and we're going to pull him in now. Sir, hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here. I know you're real busy right now.
I'm just selling some masks and T-shirts and things, so just some support, and just so we can just have things being in solidarity of on the same page with what we're trying to do as far as just trying to understand that all lives matter, not just Black lives, all matters. I just pray we can just come together as one. And I just pray, regardless of the outcome of this situation, we do not tear this city up, because we already handled this in a better way.
And I was out here within the last hour, and this was not set up. So you got out here and you set this up within, I want to say about 20 minutes.
When I heard the makeshift of the decisions when they come down, but we read at 4 o'clock, and someone told me that, and I just said, let me get out here and see if I can just, do the best I can with what I'm working with. Just hoping that this city is not overthrown with a lot of negativity like it has been, that we have to board up and all these things. It's really sad, though, that we have to resort to that way to find justice. So I pray that we don't have to tonight.
Are you from
Thank
Minnesota?
you so much. I know you're busy, so I'll let you get back to work. But like I said, he's selling masks, he's selling materials, and this is just what we've been seeing out here, not just today, but during the earlier protests. There are groups out here, not just the growing crowds, but there are vendors There's Twin Cities Relief Initiative providing food for people out here. So right now the energy out here is very positive, but of course we are waiting for that verdict to come in to see if that all changes. So we're going to stay out here and continue to let you know what's going on. Back to you.
Charmaine, thank you so much. It's 3:45, and once again, we are keeping an eye on court. Let's reset for everybody that maybe is just joining us right now. A verdict is about to be read in court. Lou Raguse has been following this trial along with Rena and Jana all the way through. Lou, just kind of reset what we're about to see.
Okay, we're expecting the verdict any moment now, and we're keeping an eye on the courtroom right now. The camera's zoomed in on the seal of the state of Minnesota. That's been our cue throughout this entire trial, that there's nothing going on at the moment. And as soon as you start to see movement there, that's when you keep hearing us say, when there's movement, we'll take you to the courtroom. That's when we know that they're about to go, as we've been covering this trial over the cameras in the court. And so Derek Chauvin is charged with 3 crimes: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And the jury needs to come to a unanimous verdict on all those.
What's happening, Chief?
If it's not unanimous, they can't acquit. If it's not unanimous, they can't.
Now watch,
convict.
even
So
if
that means
watch after this, they're going to do an electric slide.
So we heard at
if
about
Sheldon gets
2 or
convicted.
2:30 that the jury had come to a verdict and that it would be read between 3:30 and 4. And so any moment now, we'll bring you to the court and we will learn Derek Chauvin's fate.
Just to clarify, when you say unanimous decision on all 3 counts, correct me if I'm wrong, they can find him guilty of second-degree murder, but not third-degree, not manslaughter.
It could be a split verdict. Yes, they could be not guilty of one of them and guilty of 2 of them, or any combination like that. You know, as some of our guests were saying, you know, in just anticipating, and because of the speed that the verdict was reached, it was their thought that it would be more likely to be the same verdict across the board.
Yeah,
just
that's
because
true.
of the speed. And a lot of times when there are jurors hung up, that's when the deliberations can last day after day after day.
I'm gonna put it on mute, y'all,
after
'cause,
10 hours of
I'm
deliberations,
actually
this
about to
jury
get me
reached a
something to
decision,
eat.
which is extremely
Sorry, I
fast
don't want y'all
for
hearing me
a
while
case
I'm,
of this magnitude.
Yeah,
chewing.
not one question we noticed as well. We were all on standby. If there was going to be a question from the jurors, they would have brought up the live shot. The judge would have been there reading it. We all would have heard it, but no questions from the jury. A very speedy, it would appear, deliberation. And Lou, can you explain for all of us now what happens moving forward? Because if he is convicted, he does not find out his fate for could be a month or so.
No,
correct?
sentencing does not happen on the spot. And there's a little bit of a difference in what can happen with the sentencing. So if he is convicted, most likely he will be handcuffed and led to jail to await sentencing. Now that's up to the judge, and the judge could choose to allow him to remain free. In the Mohammed Noor case, he was arrested right away. And so I think the same thing would happen here. And then the next thing is the judge will set a sentencing date, and he will allow the attorneys to make their arguments. It's called briefs, which are arguments in writing, as to whether there are aggravating factors or not. The judge will decide then if there are aggravating factors, meaning that he can give a higher sentence than what's allowed within the sentencing guidelines. The sentencing guidelines, if he were to be convicted of second-degree murder or third-degree murder, the sentencing guidelines would only allow a 12.5-year or a 15-year at the most sentence. And for the manslaughter, it would only be 4 years. But if he's allowed to go above the guidelines, then the statutory maximum would be 40 years for second degree, 25 years for third degree, or 10 years for second degree manslaughter. So there's a lot of different possibilities to play out, and that would likely be a few weeks after the verdict is read here.
Well, and Lou, let's talk for a minute about that second degree murder charge. What would the state have had to prove for the conviction to come on that count?
Well, the reason that it's so complicated is that they have to also prove an underlying assault, and that assault would require proving intent. And so some people were worried, like, well, they won't be able to prove that he intended to hurt George Floyd if there's a juror who thinks that it might have been an accident. But as it turned out, the instruction that they received was the intent. All the intent means is that he intended to put his knee on him. And then at some point that was an unlawful act, and it caused great bodily or substantial bodily harm to George Floyd, which would just mean a loss of consciousness. And so you can see how the jury would be able to come to the conclusion that there was an underlying assault and that the knee was a substantial factor in George Floyd's death. That was the other thing. It didn't have to be the only factor in George Floyd's death. And so if there was a juror who thought, well, maybe underlying health conditions played a role, or maybe drugs played a role. Well, it still could, and they still could find Derek Chauvin guilty as long as his actions played a substantial causal factor.
And there was a little bit of drama, maybe more than a little bit, in closing arguments when Eric Nelson, the defense attorney, made it appear that that was not the case, correct? And there are several legal experts surprised the state did not object.
Yeah, so they felt that Eric Nelson had misstated the law in his closing argument to the jury, but the judge said, you know what, it's your job as the prosecutors in your rebuttal, which Jerry Blackwell then gave his rebuttal. It's your job to set them straight. And Jerry Blackwell did do that in his rebuttal, and the judge just let it go after that. I mean, I think that a lot of this case has gotten so much attention and so much scrutiny that every little thing makes people worry. But I think in Judge Cahill's eyes, he thought, like, you know what, just fix it in your rebuttal, and they can go off the instructions which they have on paper in front of them for deliberations.
All right, Lou, thank you so much. Stand by. We are all standing by for court and for a verdict to be read. Let's go back to 38th in Chicago. Devon Roming is standing by live. Devon?
Hey, Randy. Yeah, we are still hunkered down here at 38th in Chicago. Of course, many people know this is the same intersection where George Floyd was killed nearly a year ago. If you take a look behind me, the crowd has grown exceptionally large here since we first got out here. There have been various chants that people have been chanting. People have been chanting Black Lives Matter. People have been chanting prosecute the police. And everyone's just kind of in a space where they are just waiting to see exactly what's going to happen, what's going to come out of this courtroom here in this verdict that we've all been waiting for over the last year or so, really, since this whole entire thing went down. I've been talking to different people that have been out here, and people said that they just wanted to be a part of history. This is a historic day for our country, and that's why they felt the need to be out here. There are families here with kids that are out here. There are interracial couples. There are same-sex couples. There's a wide range of people that are out here wanting to be a part of this, wanting their voice to be heard, and wanting really just, again, to be a part of this historic day here in our city. Guys, back to you.
All right, Devon, thank you so much. And we are doing continuing coverage here from the moment that we heard that there would be a verdict read. We have been on the air and we've been watching at the same time the live feed from the Hennepin County Courthouse and the courtroom where the judge and jury will reconvene to read that verdict. We were told it would happen between 3:30 and 4. As of yet, we have not seen a lot of action in the courtroom, but we do know that Derek Chauvin has arrived in the building. We also know that 20 minutes after the verdict is read, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General whose office prosecuted this case, says he will hold a press conference, and an hour after the verdict is read, the family's attorney, George Floyd's attorney.
Yeah, I noticed that,
is planning
CH.
on
They always
holding
got to
a
mention
press
that, the
conference as
Rainbow
well. This is going
Coalition.
to be a
That's
busy
really
night.
what Black
It's going
Lives
to be
Matter
an
is.
emotional night, no matter which
It's
way
a
this goes.
pro-LGBTQ
And we
front.
will be here watching it every step of the way, as have Rena Sargentopoulos and Lou Ragoose on KARE 11. You've probably been watching them every day. Rena, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. I've appreciated the way you've watched the trial much in the same way I did, and would often interject saying, you know, I'm no legal scholar. I'm just watching this as someone, same way someone is watching it from home. After spending hours and hours and hours watching this trial, was there anything that stuck out to you, whether it had to do with the trial, the emotions around it, the attorneys, anything now that it's all nearly said and done that really is sticking with you?
Absolutely, Julie. I mean, it's just, like you said, I'm certainly not a legal mind, and Lou has been so great about that side of it. But it's been interesting to just kind of watch as someone who hasn't covered trials, really to figure out how our legal system worked. And I felt like I was kind of surprised by a lot of things that happened. And, you know, I was taking some of the viewer questions that were coming in, like, why was there allowed to be so much emotion on the stand? We usually think of as trials like this where you're not allowed to bring that emotion in, but we saw a ton of emotion on the stand, mostly obviously from the witnesses who were there. And that was truly impactful. And then, you know, even as a journalist, I chose not to watch the video up until this point. And then having to watch every minute of this trial, I watched that video just like the jurors did over and over and over again. So I was struck really by what the jurors had to go through emotionally, just the time spent in there. And I know we've heard from so many people that they take it so very seriously. But I think I was struck the most by what the jurors have to witness every single day and how this may potentially change their lives going forward in the future. And also knowing that someone's life hangs in the balance and that someone's life was lost in all of this.
Absolutely.
It was truly emotional.
Well, I appreciate that. I knew that you would have something insightful to say, and we would come and kind of swap out roles here in the
I get
newsroom at the
tired
end
of
of the
it too.
day, and I would just
We
look
all
at
should
both
get
you
tired
and
of
Lou
it.
and think, wow, sitting there all day, even not as a juror, is an emotional and it's a big job. So it's hard to
Quite the
imagine being a jury.
education.
Yeah.
I think people who have watched this trial over the last 3 weeks, if you didn't know much about how a trial operates,
Without a
I think
doubt.
we all got an incredible education in 3 weeks.
And speaking of the jurors, Lou, I just want to ask you a quick question here about them and their identities. We know, of course, right now that for their own safety, they're being kept anonymous. It's up to the judge, correct, to decide when their names would be published and their
Yes.
identities known. I think all of us feel for them, the responsibility. We know how high the emotions are on both sides, and it seems that we know that the defense attorney has received threats. One of the defense witnesses, a former home was vandalized in California. There's a lot of emotion around this. How does a judge make that decision?
Well, it is Derek Chauvin's constitutional right to have a fair and open trial that the jurors' names will be eventually released. The precedents that exist are like mob cases where literally the jurors' heads are on a hit list when a mobster is being brought under trial. In the Knorr case, they waited a full year before the judge released them in that case. And I think it's fair to say by the time that they released those names that those jurors were in no danger. Okay, but I'm sure they were very worried. But I think that the argument could be made that there were not people that wanted to go and get them for their verdict. It'll be tough for Judge Cahill in this case to decide at what point it's safe to release those names, but he's made it clear that it will happen at some point.
Lou, thank you so much. Let's check in one more time with Charmaine. She is down at the Hennepin County Government Center. Charmaine?
Now look at the flags out there. That's the trans
yes,
flag.
we've been out here for at least the last hour, but I want to take you right to what we're seeing now. They're chanting
Y'all
no
saw
justice,
that?
no peace, a large
Let me
crowd out
rewind
there.
it
You can see just
a
how
little
many.
bit.
The precedent, the time that they released those names, that those jurors were in no danger. Okay, but I'm sure they were very worried. But I think that the argument could be made that the
Government Center. Charmaine?
Look, I paused it, but that's the transgender flag right in the back. When I was out in Chalmette back this summer for a Black Lives Matter protest that I covered, and it was a young brother that did it. I don't think he had anything to do with it, but I saw white folks that were out there with Black Trans Matter signs. I saw maybe a couple of rainbow flags, but that's the flag that you got out there. That's what they are really. It's like Judge Joe Brown says, it's basically spring break. These people ain't about no action. You see mostly is white folks that's out there.
Hi, yes, we've been out here for that we see out here, and we can only expect it's going to be out here. A lot of people are just waiting, gathering for that verdict to come. Back to you.
All right, Charmaine, thank you so much. We appreciate your perspective on the ground and being our eyes and ears there. We want to bring back Brock Hunter now, a criminal defense attorney who's been watching this trial with us for some perspective. I want to pose that same question I did to you, Mr. Hunter, about the jury, their security, their anonymity, and what the judge takes into consideration when deciding when to release their identities to the public.
Sure, Julie. I can't think of another case in which this issue of jury anonymity and security is more significant. And certainly the judge is going to be taking into consideration, just how much danger these jurors might be in. I think if the jury comes back convicting on all counts, that level of security concern is going to be lower than if they were coming back and acquitting Derek Chauvin on one or more counts. But I think, we have to assume that whatever the judge's decision is, that the identities of these jurors, one way or another, is going to make it out into the public. Once the trial is over, jurors are free to talk to the media. And from that point on, the identities of the jurors become a lot harder for the court to hide and control, release from the public.
Well, I have a more of a procedural question for you now. We heard, I guess it was at about 2:30 that a verdict was imminent. It was going to be read between 3:30 and 4. What is happening in that downtime? And now it is 4 o'clock, so clearly it's going to be read a little bit later in that. What are they doing? What's happening behind the scenes?
Well, a lot of times it is waiting for all of the necessary parties to assemble. And with everybody flowing into downtown with news of the verdict, we may be running into some issues with just some of the folks who need to be there in the courtroom being able to get to the courthouse and through security. There is also perhaps chambers conferences going on with the attorneys and the judge discussing various procedures that they're going to follow once the verdict is read. A lot of housekeeping that is going to need to be taken care of, any one of which could be delaying the verdict actually being read.
One more question for you. As we prepare to see the verdict being read, what will that look like? Will the judge speak, and then will he, kind of walk us through what we will see?
Sure. Well, if you're in the courtroom, what you see is that the jury comes in and the jury foreman hands an envelope with the verdict to the judge's clerk, and then the judge's clerk hands the verdict to the judge, who reads it, and then more often than not, the judge hands the verdict back to the clerk, and the clerk reads that verdict out loud. Judge Cahill may choose to read the verdict himself, but that's the way it's typically done in Minnesota courts.
All right. Thank you so much, Brock. We'll have you continue standing by if you would. And as we have mentioned, we are keeping a live look at the courtroom up at all times. As soon as we get any indication they're ready to start, we will go there live immediately. But as of now, this is still the view that we are getting from inside the courtroom. We have our Boyd Hooper now, who is at a barbershop in North Minneapolis to try to hear from people there what they're thinking and feeling. Boyd?
Yeah, Julie, actually not North Minneapolis, but South Minneapolis. We're on 38th, just a few blocks from George Floyd Square at the Urban Touch Barbershop. Billy Hill is the owner here. Billy, I know you've got a number of people here, customers who are waiting around as you are for the verdict. What are you feeling right now?
Just a little nervous, anxiety, just for the unknown, just like everyone else. Just hoping for the best.
Everybody's been talking about the speed with which the verdict has been coming down.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that because it came back so quick, that it's going to be that he's going to be charged. He's going to be charged. But the key thing is, what is he going to be charged with?
Hello?
That's the big question. That's the big question. What is he going to be charged with?
Who's that?
I know you've got TV sets, 3 of them here. You've been watching this trial for the last few weeks.
Yep.
What's your primary takeaway? What do you think the jurors looked at most closely as they had to make their decision?
I think what they end up doing is just really looking at the film, watching the footage, listening to the cries that George Floyd had ended up screaming out.
Somebody on the phone in the barbershop.
Not letting anyone else, just play with their mind as far as anything else that was going to end up killing him. There was the pressure from the knee and holding him down for minutes of time that ended up killing that man.
We, as we drove in here today, you're again just a few blocks from 38th in Chicago. We saw boarded up windows. Your windows are not boarded up. Will they be? And if not, what's your thinking on that?
Well, I'm thinking that we're going to board them up. We boarded them up last year. So, everything is happening so fast right now. And so we're planning on it, though.
Okay. Oh, so they'll go up tonight? Or?
Yeah, they'll probably go up tonight. Okay. So.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We'll be here with you to take in the verdict.
Okay.
I know there's great interest in this shop, and you're very kind to allow us to be here to to take that in with you. So thank you, Billy.
Thank you.
All right. Again, Billy Hill, the owner of Urban Touch Barbershop here on 38th. Again, we're just a few
Boyd, we're going to have to
blocks,
interrupt
Billy,
you.
5 or
We
6
see the
blocks.
judge now has been seated and will listen in on the verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial.
All right, guys, this is it. The judge is up.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District.
Well, he said verdicts.
State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror 4-person, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury 4-person, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury 4-person 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
This is called polling the jury.
Are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy duty jury
Now
service.
watch, here comes
What I'm
the
going to ask you to
electric
do now
slide.
is
Guys,
to follow the
please don't
deputy
do
back
this.
into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So all rise for the jury. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately, returnable in 4 weeks. And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
Your Honor, the state would move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
All
right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
So there you have it. Derek Chauvin found guilty on all 3 charges: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He is now being taken off to the Hennepin County Jail. Sentencing will take place in 8 weeks, about 2 months from now.
And it was a noticeable difference from Derek Chauvin's very stoic, non-emotional response to that verdict to the response from the crowd outside. Let's head outside now and check in with Charmaine Nero on the reaction of that crowd as word spread, Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts. Charmaine?
Hi, yes, as you can see out here, as you can hear out here, the energy is just, I mean, as soon as they read that verdict, you can hear just the cheers, people excited out here. You can see the crowd is still very reacting, I should say. We see a lot of people crying. I saw a couple of tears. You know, the energy out here was a relief, I want to say, for people when they read that those 3 charges for guilty. And here we are seeing just the crowd starting to disperse. So not as much tension out here, but just a lot of emotions, a lot of people just feeling the energy of what just happened. I mean, this is months and months of people just anxiously waiting for this verdict, and to hear that, we have one young lady right here who we saw crying, tears. And just, can we ask you how you're feeling right now?
I am so excited, so grateful to God. Our team, Restoration Incorporated, which is a faith-based human service agency that the city of Minneapolis chose to help bring peace and trauma, to help with the trauma, help outreach to our young people, and keep everyone safe. We've been praying nonstop for this verdict. And we are so thankful. I'm so thankful to God, because only a God could do something like this in America. I've never seen it. And I'm so excited to be alive and to be a part of the solution. And I say to all of our people, go home, celebrate in a way that's safe. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt anybody. Don't bother any stores. Just go home and celebrate. Restoration Incorporated, we're going to have a big barbecue, and we're going to celebrate justice. Justice.
And do you mind if I bring to you, because I saw tears
gonna
coming
eat
out of your
barbecue.
eyes when that verdict was read. Tell me
gonna
what
celebrate.
you
We
I mean, it was just unbelievable. It's almost, I can't even explain the words. Just so loved, you know. And then the sun shining through, after all these clouds.
I get
and
people
it was
being
just so
excited
beautiful.
about
It's
this,
so beautiful.
but
And
let me
I
just
can feel
say
the
this.
spirit on me right now, and
This is
God's
not,
presence is
hold on,
definitely here, and it's
let me
it's
mute
really
the
touching.
audio
And,
so y'all can take a look.
to know that
This
we
is
are
not
loved.
over with just yet.
Everybody can know that,
Let me.
it's true. God
I'll
loves
mute
us
this.
so much.
And I know that.
Let me say this. This is not over with just yet. This is only part of the battle. There is more to be done. There's a sentencing that has to take place. The judge even opened the door for the defense to try and make an appeal when he made that remark about Maxine Waters. It's not over with yet. So just be ready.
Beautiful souls out here. So,
And
Charmaine,
and that was
thank you so
beautifully
much.
said. And I wanted to talk to them so you can see yourself the emotions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with your shot. We will check back. But we also have Devon Rahming at 38th in Chicago, where emotions are running high as well. Devon, explain that reaction when the verdict was read.
Well, Julie, I got to tell you, this place erupted with cheers, with tears, very similar to what you heard Charmaine mention at the site that she's at. People just overcome with emotion at the fact that Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all 3 charges. Many people we spoke with say this is the moment that they have been waiting for over the last year. They've spent the last year stressed and anxious, waiting for justice. One woman we spoke with said she feels like her babies are officially now safe, that this is the start of a new America for Black children, for Black men and women in this country. And she said that this is just the beginning, that there's still a long way to go when it comes to racial equality and all people being treated equal in this country. But she says this is just the beginning. And that's basically the same sentiment that we've been hearing from everyone who is partaking in this historic moment here at 38th in Chicago. Again, the same intersection where George Floyd was killed nearly a year ago. Julie?
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's something to see, and it is something that we're sure will last for a while, and that we'll all remember where we were when that verdict was read. It has certainly been a historic trial. It has had the eyes of the world trained on our community, and there have been high emotions all around. And we've watched as the crowds, both outside the Government Center and 38th in Chicago, have grown throughout the afternoon once we knew the verdict was about to be read. With everyone hearing as it went through the crowd that it was guilty, 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 you can see the emotion from a community that maybe thought that this was not just a verdict about whether or not Derek Chauvin is guilty of the technical counts, but whether or not they would be heard, they would be acknowledged, that their whole community would be seen. And we do know that there are all kinds of feelings and emotions right now that people are feeling across the Twin Cities. Interesting though, and I'm joined here in the studio, of course, by Randy and by Lou Ragoose and Rita Sargentopoulos and Janice Shortle, and how absolutely stoic and non-emotional Derek Chauvin was as he was handcuffed, as he heard his verdict, and as he was handcuffed and taken out of the courtroom. An interesting juxtaposition, not unexpected, of course, to the reaction outside of the courtroom. Jana, I know you've spent so much time talking with community members and people who have been trying to agitate.
Anything further?
Let me go back.
All right.
Hold on.
Thank you.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna have to put you in handcuffs. Come on. All right. Okay. Give that there. Wait a minute. All right. We're good. We're good.
We're adjourned.
So there you have it. Derek Chauvin found guilty on all 3 charges: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He is now being taken off to the Hennepin County Jail.
Okay.
Sentencing will take place in 8 weeks, about 2 months.
It's right now.
Thanks, Julie. You know, especially when we look at George Floyd Square, 38th in Chicago, I haven't seen that many people there that we just saw since last May and June, when they were there for a very different reason, the death of George Floyd. And there today, you heard some of them say that they gathered again for some semblance of justice, for some semblance of an end to this, but a beginning to something else. And I can tell our viewers, I live very close to George Floyd Square, and it for many days, of course, over the winter and as we got into the fall and spring, you didn't see as many folks there. It didn't have as many visitors, and you would always, though, even when there were a half a dozen people there, and I went many times, people would be there to do something that I heard someone else say on our air just about 30 minutes ago. They went there to feel something. And there's something about going there, and you can hear about this trial and you can listen to testimony, especially when you heard it from witnesses, to go and just to be 130 days.
Now watch, it's gonna be.
And
Look,
they
let me
did,
just tell y'all, there's gonna be a
come
lot
there to
of
mourn
a
right after
big
George
block
Floyd
party.
died. And now
This
clearly
is what I didn't
coming
want,
there
because I knew people were going to
into what
be
has
out
turned
there
into
partying.
a
There's going to be a dance.
celebration
This
where
is
they
far
feel
from
justice has
over.
been served, and
They
they
got
want
the other
to
officers, yeah.
acknowledge that and experience that together.
That's something
Lou
else
and
I got.
Rena,
Well,
you've
our
watched
children
this
can
trial
feel safe.
from our
When have your
studio
children ever
every
been
single
safe
day
in
for
America?
3 weeks. Any reaction?
When have your children ever been safe in America? You should never feel safe. They had to get this one because everybody just saw the video. Everybody was outraged, white and black. This ain't over with. But when I saw Derek Chauvin leave, and I was like, deuces, bitch.
I'm sure if we get the opportunity to interview a juror, they will say no, absolutely, the pressure did not play a role. It's impossible to know, if that really does play any sort of role. But I mean, they are in a bubble while they are sequestered and so forth. They know that this is going on outside, but they don't know to the extent that we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that jurors take their jobs very, very seriously when they're in that position.
And Lou, as we talked about throughout this trial, they were not sequestered throughout the entirety of this trial. We did have the Daunte Wright shooting. We did have some unrest in our community. But I think the thing that is so overwhelming right now as I'm watching just social media is the emotion that is pouring out. People saying, thank God. People saying, finally some justice. But we also have people who are saying, okay, we got this verdict, but. This is just the beginning, and we really have to do the work to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Right. There are issues they're not solved just because we got
That's
three
correct.
Guilty verdicts
Mm-hmm.
today.
Absolutely.
And I know Jana has many people that she's spoken to in the community have said the very same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Governor Walz spoke to it this week. I mean, there was a lot of criticism to the governor's office after the police response to the Daunte Wright shooting, and I think that is the point. The point is that after George Floyd died, or after George Floyd was murdered, it is a murder now. Derek Chauvin is guilty of murder. The legislature did not pass as significant of reform as a lot of people wanted. And so now the ball's back in their court, I guess.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jen.
go ahead.
Interesting, Lou, that you bring up that point that was being talked about on a national stage today with President Biden. This is his first test as president in this realm of coming up with criminal justice reform on a federal scale. So it doesn't go city to city, state to state, that we get some kind of guidance from that direction. So this is, as we all know, we've been told and we've been saying it, the world is watching, and it is watching in both interest and to see change. And so we'll see where this, because while we see, relief and celebration by some in community tonight, we also saw testifying for the state, many police officers, even our police chief, talking about that change had to come. And so as we go to tomorrow, we all will still live here. What will happen tomorrow in Minnesota?
And Jana, absolutely to that point, our great guest A.L. Brown pointed out the difference there between that policing was on trial, in his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you guys. Let's head back out to 38th in Chicago. Devon Raming is standing by live. Devon?
Hey, Randy. Yeah, there is still a overwhelming sense of emotion that's pouring out of people here at 38th in Chicago now that we know the verdict in this trial. I want to bring in some folks that I just met here at 38th in Chicago who don't actually live too far from this area. Guys, what are you feeling right now in this moment?
Man, I'm just overloaded with joy right
guys,
now.
I've been told
Super happy.
CNN is on and Van Jones is starting to
I
cry.
can't even put it into words. I'm still just so caught off guard. But it feels really, really good. It's a big victory for us.
Why did you guys feel the need to be out here today?
Well, I mean, Cubs have been my corner hood store since I was a little kid. Been coming here all the time. There's been problems at Cup, but it never results in the police kneeling on a man's neck for 9 minutes straight. That was just messed up.
So this is your neighborhood. You've been out here day in, day out. Talk to me about what the last year has been like as you've been waiting for this moment today.
So what happened too, guys, is
been
that
full
the
of
judge
anxiety
is
for
the one
sure.
that's going to get to decide the sentence.
Been out here
Let me
all the
mute
time
this.
though,
This is important to note.
George
So
Floyd Square is still
I just
booming.
learned this. Yeah, if found guilty, Sheldon waived his right to have the jury decide his sentencing. They talked about that before the jurors deliberated. So the judge ultimately will make the final decision. Because remember, even in Chicago, people forget Laquan McDonald, when he was murdered, the police officer was sentenced, but he got a lighter sentence. He didn't get, a full 10, 15 years. So you got to wait for the sentencing. I know a lot of people are just excited because it feels like justice has been done. Yes, his ex-wife is now divorced. They are divorced, but I remember a judge actually dismissed the judgment of divorce. Initially, he dismissed it because he felt that it wasn't a true divorce that they were trying to get. They basically were trying to preserve property. But let's see what's going on here.
Words, I can't even express it. I was just elated. But I don't want to say relief because we have a lot of work to do, but it is a good feeling.
Yeah, many people that I've been speaking with out here say that it's a new day, a new beginning for the city of Minneapolis and for the country.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And for this community, my community.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's basically the sentiment we've been getting from a lot of people that we've been interacting with. And for the most part, these celebrations are continuing here at 38th in Chicago. We've got someone that's speaking right now at the actual location where George Floyd was taken down here outside of Cup Foods. And people are just kind of living in the moment right now. As I said before, you saw people were making it rain out here with dollar bills over the crowd, and there's still money that's flying around. Just people celebrating this moment, this historic moment in time here for the city of Minneapolis and for our country. Guys, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Devon. We're going to go now to our Sharon Yu. She is at Shiloh Temple, and I know the pastor there has been very active in the community, offering support, calling for peace. And Sharon, we'll just join you with his thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Julie. I mean, Shiloh Temple in North Minneapolis has just been absolutely pivotal in this community. They've been holding safe spaces for people to come and talk about their feelings because, leading up to this moment, there's been a lot of anxiety. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Bishop Richard Howell. He's been leading this community here. Bishop, can I just start with your reaction? You were crying earlier.
I was. Very emotional moment several minutes ago when we learned of the verdict of Derek Chauvin. Certainly, we're glad for the Floyd family, especially, who have endured such a terrible trauma over the last year. We're very happy for them, but we're also happy for justice. Justice was served, and we're so grateful that our city can see that the justice system can work. And when we see the truth, people taking videos, body cams, understanding great testimonies coming from witnesses, then we understand that this is the right time for justice to be celebrated. We're celebrating that right now.
And Bishop, I couldn't help but notice there are a lot of adorable kiddos. They're gone now, but just a few minutes ago, they were all watching the verdict be announced. Just what is it like when you look at the young kids who are here, just taking a part and soaking in history?
Being overwhelmed by the news reports over the last year.
It's a good point, DeAndre. This is the same city where he was sentenced to 14 years for killing that white woman accidentally.
Has got to be such a kairos moment.
That looks like George Floyd's
There's
family.
no question that we all been heavy burdened with news and incidents that's been taking place in Minnesota, especially. But for those young people to see what happened today, I think that they can go home feeling a little better today than they ever had in a long time.
That's right. And we were also talking over there saying that, this is a joyous moment for a lot of folks, and also that still there's work that needs to be done. This week is also still a heavy week because you guys are hosting the funeral services for Dante Wright. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is not an easy situation. The public viewing will begin tomorrow from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. tomorrow night, and then the funeral following on Thursday beginning at 12 noon. Our prayers are definitely with the Wright family. even though we are excited about what happened with the Floyd family for their happiness. But we are also mourning right now with the Wright family. But we have to do the hard work, which lies ahead in the next 2 days.
I don't know what you guys think.
Tonight,
What
though,
y'all
you
seen
guys
so
are
far.
hosting another prayer service. I see a couple of people
I've been
trickling in now.
broadcasting now for about an hour. I was actually going to do a live stream earlier. I'm going to still live stream later today. I was having Brother Garland come on. We were going to be talking about 5 years since the anniversary of Prince's death. I told him he would come back, so we're going to do that later today in the next couple of hours. So y'all be on the lookout for that one. So it's a special doubleheader. But I wanted to come live on this one, guys, because this was breaking news that George Floyd, again, justice has been served accordingly. Derek Chauvin has been convicted on all 3 counts, including the most severe second-degree murder. He has also been convicted of manslaughter. He was also convicted for third-degree murder as well on all 3 counts. The guilty came back with the verdict came back guilty on all 3 counts. Let's hear what they have to say right quick before I end it there.
Shop just down the street, 5 or 6 blocks away from George Floyd Square. It was pensive in here, I think that's fair to say, as the verdicts were read, and then it was celebratory. Billy Hill is the owner of Urban Touch Barbershop. I saw you embrace customers, coworkers.
Yeah.
There were high fives.
Yep.
Kiss raised.
Yeah.
What was the sentiment behind that display that we saw?
Relief. Just the big pressure that was off, and just glorifying, first of all, for the verdict, and glorifying our prayers were answered, and just ecstatic about the whole situation. So just putting us behind us. So
there was a lot of talk about change. Something changed today in the aftermath of those verdicts being read. Can you expand on that? What you meant by that?
Well, there's a little bit of change. It's a little bit more trustworthy as far as with the police and things like that. I think it really helped the communities that say, to send a message to the police that's saying that basically you are responsible for behind your actions. So instead of patrolling us and acting like we're savages, start treating us like human beings. That's the main thing. The humanity was gone from that situation. So with that being said, I'm just happy that this case turned out the way it did, and that we can go forward, and it sends the message to the rest of the police force and to others that it doesn't matter what position that they're in, they can be held accountable behind their actions.
You were telling me just before the verdict was read that you were going to board up your windows tonight. Are you feeling a little better about
a lot better about the situations? So who knows? But for the most part, right now, I'm just living in the moment. I'm happy. I'm celebrating. I'm feeling good.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and letting us be here to share this with you. Hey, Jerry. Jerry Williams and I were talking just a few minutes ago, and Jerry, you were telling me you look at this as this is something spiritual to you to be here to watch this today.
Absolutely. It's a spiritual move. I think that it was predestined for something of this magnitude to happen. Unfortunately, we had to experience another loss of life, Black life, for it to happen. But I think it was predetermined, and it's time. It's time for it to happen. For people to understand that it's time to get your affairs, that being your house, in order. It's an old Southern euphemism that means it's time to get your relationship right with the Lord. If you don't know him, get to know him. You better. Be ye Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. It's time for change.
Will you ever forget this moment and being in this shop as those verdicts were read?
Never. This is family. So, I literally left my job. I work right up the street at Seward. And I literally left my job 7 minutes early to get here, to be here, to experience this with my brothers. That's how important it was to me.
Jerry, thank you for talking with us. Thanks to everyone in the shop for allowing us to be here. It was an emotional moment, and partly because they've been watching this moment for the past few weeks unfold as they've watched the trial on the TV sets here. So we'll send it back to the studio from Urban Touch Barbershop in South Minneapolis.
All right, Boyd, we appreciate it. Thank you. We want to bring in A.L. Brown now, a criminal defense attorney who's helped us throughout this entire trial understand what's going on. You've offered so much insight from the legal perspective. I want to start by asking you on a personal level what your reaction is.
It's a bowl of emotions, and I could pick from any one of them. I could feel and I do feel a sense of relief that what we learned is that there's just that much hope left in the American criminal justice system. There's enough reason to keep fighting for justice. And that fills me. That fills me to the top. But I still can't let that feeling of relief make me feel like I'm relieved from the work it's going to take to make sure something like this never happens again. I am so thrilled that a jury said what everybody saw. Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. He murdered him. We don't have to dance around it or play like we didn't see it. We watched a state officer, an officer of the state of Minnesota, by virtue of coming through the city of Minneapolis, kill a citizen of Minnesota. We watched that. And I am so grateful that the jury acknowledged that so that we don't have to feel like we can't trust the system at all. I'm not going to pretend like it makes me feel like we have arrived, because we just heard the report that there'll be a funeral service for another person killed. And that,
your George, like your Van Jones, I mean, he cried about everything from the election. He cried, 2 elections. He cried over all other stuff. He got exposed because he was actually hanging out with Donald Trump and the Trump family beforehand when he was on The View. Yeah, I understand why people would be emotional about this, because this was something that, everybody's saying hopefully they will get justice and so forth. I get that. But, there have been times in America where white men, although it's been rare, have been convicted of killing a black man. You look at James Byrd, Texas, for the first time in only the second time in history, a white man was put to death for murdering, lynching a black man in James Byrd. And that was only because, they remember that case. They dragged James Byrd out in, I believe it was Jasper, Texas. They gave the death penalty. I think one of them was just put on death row. So it's not over with yet. That's the point that I was making. So this is the prosecutors. They're about to speak and give a statement. I'm sure the defense is
on the case. This was some.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah, go to your right. Let me see everybody.
Yeah, thank you. That's much better.
So Natasha, people got to be able to see the baby too.
Especially after the baby ran here, right?
Yeah.
Baby on board.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Ellison. I'm the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. And since the investigation and prosecution of this case began last May, everyone involved has pursued one goal: justice. We pursued justice wherever it led. When I became the lead prosecutor for the case, I asked for time and patience to review the facts, gather evidence, and prosecute for the murder of George Floyd to the fullest extent the law allowed. I want to thank the community for giving us that time and allowing us to do our work. That long, hard, painstaking work has culminated today. I would not call today's verdict
8 weeks.
Justice, however, because justice implies true restoration. But it is accountability, which is the first step towards justice. And now the cause of justice is in your hands. And when I say your hands, I mean the hands of the people of the United States. George Floyd mattered. He was loved by his family and his friends. His death shocked the conscience of our community, our country, the whole world. He was loved by his family and friends. But that isn't why he mattered. He mattered because he was a human being. And there is no way we can turn away from that reality. The people who stopped and raised their voices on May 25th, 2020, were a bouquet of humanity, a phrase I stole from my friend Jerry Blackwell. A bouquet of humanity, old, young, men and women, black and white, a man from the neighborhood just walking to get a drink, a child going to buy a snack with her cousin, an off-duty firefighter on her way to a community garden, brave young women, teenagers, who press record on their cell phones. Why did they stop? They didn't know George Floyd. They didn't know he had a beautiful family. They didn't know he had been a great athlete. And they didn't know he was a proud father or that he had people in his life who loved him. They stopped and raised their voices, and they even challenged authority because they saw his humanity. They stopped and they raised their voices because they knew that what they were seeing was wrong. They didn't need to be medical professionals or experts in the use of force. They knew it was wrong, and they were right. These community members, this bouquet of humanity, did it again in this trial. They performed simple yet profound acts of courage. They told the truth, and they told the whole world the truth about what they saw. They were vindicated by the chief of police, by Minneapolis's longest serving police officer, and by many other police officers who stepped up and testified as to what they saw and to what they knew. What happened on that street was wrong. We owe it, and we owe our gratitude to we owe them our gratitude for fulfilling their civic duty and for their courage in telling the truth. To countless people in Minnesota and across the United States who joined them in peacefully demanding justice for George Floyd, we say, all of us, thank you. In the coming days, more may seek to express themselves again through petition and demonstration. I urge everyone to honor the legacy of George Floyd by doing so calmly, legally, and peacefully. I urge everyone to continue the journey to transformation and justice. It's in your hands now. I also want to address the Floyd family, if I may. Over the last year, the family of George Floyd had to relive again and again the worst day of their lives when they lost their brother, their father, their friend. I'm profoundly grateful to them for giving us the time we needed to prosecute this case. They have shown the world what grace and class and courage really look like. Although a verdict alone cannot end their pain, I hope it's another step on the long path toward healing for them. There's no replacing your beloved Perry, or Floyd, as his friends called him, but he is the one who sparked a worldwide movement, and that's important. We owe our thanks to the men and women of the jury who gave many hours of their time and attention to carefully listening to the evidence, weighing the facts, rendering a verdict. They are regular people from all walks of life, a lot like that bouquet of humanity on that corner on May 25th and in that courtroom. They answered the call, and they served in a landmark trial. They now deserve to return to their lives. If they ask you to respect their privacy, we ask you to honor that request. I want to acknowledge the remarkable team that helped us prosecute the case. We put everything we had into this prosecution. We presented the best case that we could, and the jury heard us, and we're grateful for that. We had the sole burden of proof in the case. And history shows that winning cases like these can be difficult. I'm proud of every hour, every minute, and every ounce of effort we put in this case. And let me tell you, we spent many hours working on this case, did we not? We, week after week, committee meeting after committee meeting, this team never let up and it never quit. We fought every day and we did it together. The Attorney General's office together with the Hennepin County Attorney's office. Thank you, sir. And we did it together. I'm deeply grateful to everyone who worked on the case. Most of these folks will tell you it's a bad idea to put together a team of all Michael Jordans. Nobody would want to pass the ball. This team, that was their true strength, is sharing the load, passing the ball, understanding that all of us together are smarter than any one of us alone. And that worked. Although the verdict has been rendered, this is not the end. In the coming weeks, the court will determine sentencing, and later this summer, we expect to present another case. We will not be talking about that. This verdict reminds us how hard it is to make enduring change. And I just want to finish by sharing some important historical legacy, if you allow me. In 1968, the Kerner Commission was formed to investigate the causes of uprisings across major American cities. And a man named Dr. Kenneth Clark, a famous African-American psychologist who, along with his equally accomplished psychologist wife, Mamie, contributed to compelling research in the Brown versus Board of Education case. And Dr. Clark testified at the Kerner Commission. And I want to quote you what he said. I read that report, the one in the 1919 riot in Chicago, and it was as if I were reading the report of investigating the committee of the Harlem riot in 1935, the report on investigating the Harlem riot in 1943, and the report of the McCone Commission on the Watts riot. I must say again in candor to you, the members of this commission, it's like a kind of an Alice in Wonderland with the same moving picture reshown over and over again, the same analysis, the same recommendation, and the same inaction. Those are the words of Dr. Clark in 1968. Here we are in 2020, 2021. Here we are in 2021, still addressing the same problem. Since Dr. Clark testified, we have seen Rodney King, Abner Louima, Oscar Grant, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Laquan McDonald, Stephon Clark, Atiana Jefferson, Anton Black, Breonna Taylor, and now Dante Wright and Adam Toledo. This has to end.
Please don't link Adam Toledo.
True justice.
I'm not trying to go
That's
at
not
that
one
boy,
case.
but and yeah, the cops
That is
lied
a
in that.
social
but
transformation
I saw from the video,
that
looked
says
like
that
he had
nobody's beneath the law and no one is above it.
He had a gun, but
this verdict
don't let
reminds
them
us
link other
that
groups
we
to
must
us.
make enduring systemic societal change. More than a month ago, months before
not the
George
same
Floyd
case.
was
It's
murdered,
not the same as
the Minnesota
Tamir
Public
Rice.
Safety Commissioner John Harrington and I released the recommendations of our
All right,
working
thank you,
group
Captain
on
PYT.
reducing deadly force encounters with law enforcement.
Y'all hit the likes.
What all of us in that
Please
working
donate
group,
to the
including
channel
law enforcement,
if you
wanted
can.
is for everyone to
You
go
see
home
it
safe.
at the bottom, guys. I'm
Anytime
about
someone
to get on
doesn't,
out of here myself.
everyone's lives are changed forever. We need to use this verdict as an inflection point. What if we just prevented the instead of having to try these
That's
cases?
the Attorney General.
We don't want
Daryl
any more
Evertson.
community members dying at the hands of law enforcement
Please,
and their families' lives
This
ruined.
was
We want
breaking news,
we
guys.
don't
What
want
y'all
any
think?
more
Y'all
law
leave a
enforcement
comment.
members
Tell me
having
what
to
y'all
face
think.
criminal charges
We're about to get
and their
on out of
families'
here.
lives ruined. We don't want any more communities torn apart.
Derek
One way to
Chauvin
prevent
guilty on
this
all three
is
counts.
to get into a new relationship where we as a society re-examine the use of force and our
Remain
old
alert, guys,
subtle
yes.
assumptions. I'm so proud of Chief Arredondo and the Minneapolis police officers who by their testimony said enough is enough. And another way to prevent it is by acknowledging.
I'm about to end the live stream, guys. Yeah, but that was it. You guys can Thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all can tune in later today too. I'll have Brother Garland Brown come on. We're going to talk about Prince and his life and death and legacy, and discuss some things about that. But yeah, Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts, guys. People are celebrating and happy about this. But y'all, please donate to the Cash App if you can, please, or the PayPal. You see the ticker at the bottom. This is a interesting day, man. All right, y'all. I'll be back at 7. Peace. I'll holla.